today. One of the things that happened along the process, and not to use a kind of a cliche term, but in the purest sense of the word, godsend, and that's with a capital G. We had a change of command at the Suncoast Partnership to End Homelessness. The Suncoast Partnership to End Homelessness is our continuum of care. The continuum of care is the federally designated agency that receives all of the federal money that goes towards homelessness. And I'm not going to get into, just how important that is, but think about it. The portal to the federal money that comes to our community comes through the efficacy and the demonstrated success of our continuum of care, which at the time had room for improvement. Ed DeMarco came on the scene, and we thought, well, okay, what were you? You were like a bean counter, right, Ed? Or something?
I was like fifth of five.
That's what I thought. Yeah, and so I knew Ed from a previous life, and I knew he was at least trustworthy. But he came onto the scene and just totally took this agency, turned it on its head from a reactive to a proactive continuum of care that aggressively worked towards ending or reducing or minimizing the impacts of homelessness in this community. He was our interim director of the continuum until we saw how effective he was. Wayne, Kevin, and a bunch of the other funders got together and said, dude, you're going to have to hang around a little bit longer than 6 or 8 months. How about maybe 2 years? And Ed, who had aspirations of playing golf, and fishing, and doing all these other ridiculous activities, said yes. So one of the most pivotal moments in our success was initially Ed DeMarco coming as the director of the continuum, and then him agreeing to stay on, so that not only can we build this system, but we can implement this system. So Ed?
Thanks so much for your kind words, and
You're
thanks
welcome.
all of you for allowing me to talk here today. You've heard a lot about what we've worked on and the efforts. I'd like to just focus on 2 things if I could. One is, what is coordinated entry and what's that really mean? Because that's one of the things we've been pushing since the beginning. I did a little thing that I learned from some of them. I've had many jobs in my life. And one of my past jobs, one of the things I learned was sometimes if you name something, it becomes real. Well, we're talking about coordinated entry for years in our continuum of care, and nothing ever really happened. We'd have meetings on coordinated entry and 6 people would show up. So about my 3rd or 4th day on the job, because I was only going to be there a few months, so I'd just kick down doors, right? I didn't have to worry about the long term. I came in and said, we have a new coordinated entry system. It's called 1 by 1, because we have to have it done by HUD standards by the 1st of January. And we want to deal with each person as an individual, not as some kind of the homeless person. And I gave it a name, created a little logo, sent it out to everybody. 60 people come to the first meeting and start contributing to make that a reality. To make a reality that we should have a system that prioritizes those who have the highest acuity of need. We've just begun to implement it in January after months of working on it and training, and really in many cases having to change the hearts and minds of people who are used to working in another environment. I use this comparison. If you went to a hospital, and this is how the hospital worked, what would you feel? Person goes into the hospital, the guy goes in, his leg's gashed, blood spewing everywhere, oh, it's gross. And the nurse comes up and says, how'd you do that? Well, I got a little drunk last night and walked through a plate glass window. And in this hospital, the nurse says, oh, so you did that to yourself. Why don't you go wait outside? We don't need blood on the floor in here, because after all, you did this to yourself. And then there's a mother and daughter there, and the daughter needs a few stitches, and at first the nurse thinks, I'll take care of them first, because with a few stitches they're going to be able to walk out the door and be successful. And at the last second, a limping dog walks in, and the family has to be put last. The limping dog first, then the family, and then if the guy hasn't, he might have to clean up his own mess. If he's still alive, we might get to them. That essentially was the model that was often, not just here, but across the country, in places dealing with the persons who were homeless, who found themselves homeless. And so we looked at last year and we noticed that over 700 people who were literally homeless found housing. But a small portion of that were the truly chronically homeless with the greatest needs. The persons who are the high flyers, the persons who come in to Judge Quartermain's court. That was a small portion. And what we were really doing is we were helping a lot of people that needed a few stitches. And that was good, that was okay, but most of those persons could self-resolve with a little bit of help and assistance. We needed to start focusing on the guy who's bleeding and helping him stop that bleeding as soon as possible. One other thing we changed, and it's a good suggestion from Susan Porcio, and you don't believe how much has changed. For a long time, when agencies would encounter someone who's homeless, they would say things like, well, do you need any services? Can we help you with anything? That seems reasonable, right? That seems like a good thing to say. And they'd say no. They'd say no. Why? Because they know where they can get their food. They know. And then we started asking people, would you like help finding an apartment? And all of a sudden, these same people who would say no to anything said, I'll do whatever you ask, whatever you need, if you can help me find an apartment. Because that's what a person needs. It's a place that's theirs, a place they can be housed, a place where they can grow and develop and plant roots. Now, are we going to have people who go through that process and are housed and fall back out? Sure. But the data shows, the statistics shows, and this is one of the things that we've tried to focus on here. Let's not reinvent the wheel. There's best practices across the country where it's been really successful. Let's do that. And then if we have to modify it for our local conditions, okay. But let's do that. And so we began to do those things. We began to train on those things. We began to work with people like Major Whiten and his staff about those kinds of issues. And they all of a sudden came up with their own ideas and their own ways to make it even better. Because we began to really focus on the idea that housing, getting a person housed, and providing wraparound services for that person after they're housed works 10 times better than fix first. And once you've proven that you're fixed, then we'll help you get a house. And that was always, that was a lot of times the model. Fix first. I always found it interesting that people would talk about, well, I'm sorry, we can't help that person. Why? They really are in need. Well, we set up 3 appointments for them and they missed one of them. And if they don't come to all 3 appointments, they're out. What? They're going to miss appointments. One of the reasons they're homeless is because they're going to miss appointments. There's going to be problems. There's going to be barriers. There's going to be difficulties. We've got to be the people who stand up with them and make things different. And so I've been really encouraged by that. And we don't want to, we're so far from having everything implemented. That's true. But we are seeing good things. Next week, maybe the week after next, we'll be publishing the new point-in-time numbers. And I can tell you, for the first time in years, those numbers are down in Sarasota. And not just by a little, by 10%. By more than 10% in some cases. Chronically homeless numbers, a little bit better. But that's because we've just started implementing coordinated entry. And next year, those numbers are going to really see an impact. Impact by the money that's being invested by the private donors, impact by our local community agencies like Harvest House and Salvation Army and many of the others, JFCS, those agencies are on the forefront doing the work every day, and they're buying into the idea that we need to be housing focused. That from the very first time a person's encountered, you have the shirts that say, what's your housing plan? Let's get a plan, let's get you housed. I get very enthusiastic about this, and I get excited about this, but it's because I really know. I tell the story a lot, and I know my time's probably running out, but
1 minute.
In 1977, I took over as director of a job training program in Ohio. And we had gotten 70 people work where unemployment at that time was like 20% in Canton, Ohio. Terrible, it's still pretty bad. And the federal government came down and said, no, next year you have to get 493 people work. And everybody said, well, it can't be done. Well, we did two things. We changed the entry process to have everything happen within 3 days so a person could immediately start looking for jobs and looking for training. And we put in every organization in the community, everyone's door, everyone's office, 493. We told them, if you see a person with a part-time job opening, we'll make it a full-time job. If you see a person who doesn't have enough help in his store, you call us, we'll go talk to him about getting him the help. And we had people from all over the community participating. And we ended up having over 650 people get jobs that year in an economy that was terrible. But it was because we got everybody working together. So in that same vein, if you drive by a place that says for rent, or if it's an empty home, call us. We'd love to find out what the rent is on that place. Is it available? Can we introduce some of the persons we're working with to that location and that introduction? If everyone's helping us on this, we'll find the places for people to be housed. That's it. Thanks.
So Peter, you see the time? And 6:45.
I know.
You told me to be here at 6:45. So we have a few moments for questions. I have one question from the card, and if there's no other cards, we will open it up to questions from the floor. Before we conclude, I would like to, in addition to introduce one other member of the Suncoast Partnership to end homelessness, our local continuum of care, and that is Tara Booker. Tara, yeah, she is. She's kind of the person that we all look to actually get it done.
She's meaner than me. Is what he's going to say.